Have you ever fantasized about being the hero of a fictional scenario? I mean, most of us have from time to time. I mean, maybe it's as simple as thinking that you'd be the one to rush into the burning building to save a person or perhaps even a dog. I don't know. But we think about these things like, what would I do in this extreme situation? Yes, of course, I would save the day. And I feel like the Apostle Peter, disciple Peter, thought about that possibly a lot and imagined himself as being the one who was going to save the day, and even tried to at one point. So let's get into our 5-minute devotional. We're in John chapter 18. We're going to cover kind of a bunch, verses 15 to 27. And it's not going to start where you might think from where we did the intro, but you'll see. Simon Peter was following Jesus, which, if you missed it, Jesus was just arrested. So was another disciple. Now that disciple, the other one, was known to the high priest, and he entered with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. But Peter was standing at the door outside. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the doorkeeper and brought Peter in. When the slave woman who was the doorkeeper said to Peter, You are not also one of the man's disciples, are you? He said, I'm not. Now the slaves and the officers were standing there, having made a charcoal fire, for it was cold. They were warming themselves, and Peter was also with them, standing and warming himself. The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teaching, and Jesus answered them, I have spoken openly to the world. I always taught in synagogues and in the temple area where all the Jews congregate, and I said nothing in secret. Why are you asking me? Ask those who have heard what I spoke to them. Look, these people know what I said. But when he said this, one of the officers who was standing nearby struck Jesus, saying, Is that the way you answer the high priest? Jesus answered him, If I have spoken wrongly, testify of the wrong. But if rightly, why do you strike me? So Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas the high priest. Now, Simon Peter was still standing and warming himself. So they said to him, You are not one of his disciples as well, are you? He denied it and said, I am not. One of the slaves of the high priest, who was related to the one whose ear Peter cut off, said, Did I not see you in the garden with him? Peter then denied it again, and immediately a rooster crowed. So, we do see some of Jesus getting questioned here, and it matters, but we're going to focus on Peter today. And Peter, you can tell, was picturing himself in these heroic circumstances when earlier in chapter 13, around verse 37, Peter said to Jesus that he would lay down his life for him. I will lay down my life for you, Peter said, and Jesus replied, Will you lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, a rooster will not crow until you deny me 3 times, which we read about today. But I want to point some things out. So, last time we saw Peter, when Jesus was getting arrested, trying to play that hero. He took out his sword. He probably tried to strike the high priest and missed and hit the ear of the guy next to him, the high priest's servant. And Jesus said, No, that's not the way we're doing this. You've got it wrong, Peter. And he healed the guy whose ear Peter had cut off. And so today, Peter gets a really bad rap for this a lot, but you notice that only Peter and this other disciple even tried to follow Jesus after he got arrested. So Peter, under whatever, I don't know what he was thinking, but he's like, okay, I'm going to follow Jesus to this nighttime sort of hearing at the high priest's house, and he follows, but he doesn't have the strength of will or of courage or whatever it is to admit that he's a disciple. And so that feels like a big failure, especially when the rooster crows and he's reminded that, oh my gosh, Jesus knew I was going to fail in this situation. So there's a lot of ways that we can feel like maybe we're letting God down. So one of them is just overestimating ourselves. And we see Peter doing that. He thought he was going to be the hero. He tried to be the hero. It didn't work out. Another one is thinking that we're doing the right thing and actually doing the wrong thing. And that's when we see him cutting off somebody's ear. He thinks he's doing the right thing. He really does, but he's not, because he totally misunderstood what Jesus wanted him to do. And that can happen too. And here's another tragic one, all too often, that he was trying to do the right thing, trying to follow Jesus. And he just kind of did it. He did follow him, and he kind of did it because he also denied him. And I feel like that's a place that we can find ourselves in a lot, because being a human is messy. It isn't always just like, yes, I've got it, I'm following Jesus, everything's going great, or man, things are just horrible. It's usually a mixture. But the thing is, the mixture is part of what it is to be human, and the mixture is what you see in all of the disciples. And the mixture does not surprise Jesus. And let me give you a little bit of a preview. This is not Peter's last chance. Doesn't mean that he didn't screw up. Doesn't mean that he didn't actually kind of fail here. But that's not the end by any means of his story with Jesus. And it's not, even in this gospel, the end of what happens between him and Jesus. And just as we need to keep going through this story to figure out what happens, sometimes we need to keep going through the story of our lives, even when we feel bad about ways that we've messed up. Because Jesus is not done with us. He is not done with you. No matter what of these ways you might feel like you have been a disappointment. God's not surprised, and he's not done with you.